Okay, when we asked our next storyteller, who was your childhood hero, he said, Mickey Mantle. As an 8-year-old back in 1961, my hero was without a doubt great Yankee shortstop Mickey Mantle and his teammate Roger Maris. They battled out to be the home run champion. I'd just become a Cub Scout, and we created scrapbooks with wooden covers. We used wood-burning tools to replicate the Cub Scout logo on the cover. We were taught how to scrapbook. I aggressively read and cut out pictures and articles about Mickey and Roger from the local daily newspaper. My scrapbook should have been put in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Mickey was amazing, hitting home runs with both right-handed and left-handed in the same game. He was not only a great great ball player, he was a likable fan favorite with his homespun Oklahoma mannerisms. I wanted to be just like Mickey, my hero. Keith Buswell, come on up.
You hear me all right? Yeah. Have any of you ever seen a big sky? A really big sky? Like one in Montana. I found myself in the little ranching town of Conrad, Montana, January of 1996. Bitter cold, under a freeze ant, but blue sky and a very, very big sky. I was there to watch a high school wrestling meet in a little tiny rural high school. One of my sons was wrestling. Got into this small gymnasium. It was tiny, it was hot, and it was smelly. If you've been to some wrestling meets, you may understand, or a wrestling meet. This was what it was. And as I was there, my son did well. He won his first match. But it was crowded. I needed space. I finally said to myself and to him, I'll be back. I know it's going to be a while before you wrestle again, but I need some fresh air and I need some space. So I left the gymnasium back into the ice cold weather, and I remembered when I drove into town, I saw a Main Street diner, and I thought nothing better than a local pancake house or whatever I want. So I thought that's what I need to hit. But I would go back to the Main Street. The roads were absolutely frozen. And it was a parking place, and I parked just pretty close to the cafe, and it was right in front of Tom's barber shop. Well, I got out of the car, carefully walking on kind of the icy sidewalk, and I thought, after I have breakfast, I think I'll come back and maybe get a haircut at Tom's. So after breakfast, I came back, a couple of storefronts, and opened up the door into Tom's barber shop. Open up the door, the pungent barber shop smell, the tonics, the hubbub, the noise, and the surroundings. Old school barber, a chair. The barber was cutting the hair of a gentleman. There were other patrons waiting, patiently waiting. Young men and older gentlemen. And it was just fun for me just to be there. I really relished the experience of being in this old school barber shop. And I ended up with a pretty decent haircut. But when I left, and later that day when the wrestling tournament was over, heading back home, I thought, man, I really relished that experience. That was just fun. Because when I walked in there, it was as if I was coming home to this environment. And the barbershops are known as really one of the great third places. Place that's not your home, not your profession, but a place where people, informal gathering places. So I'm driving down the road and I'm saying to myself, I want to do this. I'd like to get my hair cut in every county in Montana. Well, Montana is the third largest state. If you stand in one corner, you have a foot in the central time zone and one in the mountain time zone. If you sit in the western, your foot's in the western or the mountain time zone and the Pacific. Only state in the country that has kind of all that time zone. And there's 56 counties. So it's a pretty ambitious thing. My professional pursuits and job took me to many of the towns and counties throughout Montana. Then I had a bunch of cute kids. And my kids were involved in all kinds of sports. So I had the opportunity to go to a lot of places. And I just planned because my goal was to get my hair cut in every town. and some of them were going to be a long ways away. But it was somewhat doable because my profession during the weeks, and so when I had a haircut, I thought, okay, I'm going to wait. I got to wait a few weeks and I'm going to plan that trip. Oh, somebody has a soccer game, someone has a wrestling, someone's playing basketball. Whatever it was, I kind of make that plan. But when I decided I needed to have a jury, some kind of judgment on the quality of the haircuts. So I went to my lovely wife and all of the 7 children that were old enough to write, and said, I need you to judge the quality of the haircuts. The scale is very simple. 1 is terrible, the worst haircut. 2 is below average. 3 is average, fair. 4 is good, a decent haircut. And 5 is exceptional, the best haircut you could ever have. So I started doing that. Well, about 15 months later, I'm headed on a trip. It's going to take me into Cardston, Alberta, Canada. And I kind of studied. I have to study the counties I haven't been to, where I might be, where the road may take me. I found a barber shop that was kind of on the way in Cutbank, Montana. Cutbank, Montana, near the Canadian border, just east of Glacier National Park. You're still in the high plains. So I get up there and pull down this main street, and I see Frank's Barber Shop. Outside's a spinning barber pole, and I know that this is the right place. I pull, and I was there quite early. I think probably just a few minutes after he was going to open. And I walked inside, and I was surprised to see there was already another patron in the chair. But I was fine, because I love to look at the memorabilia, the plethora of magazines, maybe sports magazines, mechanics, outdoor life, National Geographics, whatever, and no one would ever pile them. It is just clutter. But you grab a magazine and you sit down and wait your turn. Well, I walked in there and I was fine. Well, all of a sudden I was surprised when the gentleman in the barber chair bounced up, jumped up, said, "Oh, I'm not getting a haircut. I'm just here shooting the breeze with Frank." And so I thought, okay, I'll be able to just step away. The gentleman left, and I was invited to sit in an old-time barber chair. And I'm sitting there, and again, I've kind of done this for over a year, and he puts the smock on me, and then men will know they take a little tissue. It's a tissue collar, tighten it up, so it's a transition between your neck and your shoulder to protect, so no little hair will get down in your neck. So I'm all geared up, and all of a sudden, he starts with the electric razor, the clippers. He starts going up and down the back of my head. He hasn't asked me how I want my hair. And I found over time, barbers think that they're all-knowing. They look at you and say, "I know what you need." And so sometimes they don't ask. And I think that's fine. A few weeks it'll grow out. So I take that risk. And so here I am with this barber, and he's going like this. And my first question is generally, "Well, so Frank, how long have you been cutting hair?" And looking at his age, I'm saying he's mid-60s. He's probably been cutting hair for 35 to 40 years. And I'm pretty accurate when I kind of look at that. And his response was, "Almost a year." So here I am in this small town with a guy, really a rookie barber without experience. He's an old guy, but he hasn't had any experience. I said, "Well, what did you do before you became a barber?" And he explained to me that he grew up in that part of Montana but the gas fields and the oil kind of got stopped. He had no job. He left Montana to find his fortune and future in California. He said, so I've been in California for many years and just come back. I said, well, Ray, what did you do in California? He said, oh, I worked for General Motors. Well, what did you do for General Motors? He said, I drove a forklift. And I'm wondering now, with his electric clippers, he's going up and down the side of my head and the back, vroom, 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 like he's still driving a forklift on the back of my head. It was relatively short. I knew the time. I knew he was cut my hair too short, but it was going to be over soon because he wasn't taking a minute breath. And the good news is, I still had my ears, and two, there were no signs of blood. And so I paid him my money, said my farewells, and I headed off to Canada. Well, the next morning I get home, and this was part of the pattern with my family. I'd shower and shampoo my hair and then put my own little style, whatever, and then I'd have each one of them rate and rank my haircuts. Now, I had to go to them individually because I was afraid that there'd be some, shenanigans, some social pressure on the one child or the other. So I would take them in isolation and say, what would you, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate my hair? And my wife was first, of course. She said, Keith, that is absolutely the worst haircut you've ever had. I can see the pink of your skin on both sides of it. It's uneven. It's terrible. You've never had a worse haircut. So you get a 1. Once I started going through the older kids, and I was kind of working down through them, they were all giving me 1. I ended up with maybe 1, 2. I came to the 6.5-year-old, Whitney. I said, Whitney, and I've got her by herself. Whitney, what's your opinion of my haircut? Without hesitation, he says, 5. I am startled. One of the best haircuts ever. And then by the time we get out with the rest of the family, they find out that she gave him a 5. They could not believe it. This is the worst haircut Dad's ever had. How could you give him a 5? And she went back forward. Then I kind of confronted her. Not in a negative way, but I said, Whitney, I am kind of curious. Why did you give me a 5? Everyone thinks this is the worst haircut I've ever had. She looked up into my eyes with her curly blonde hair, big smile, and said, Dad, I thought you would buy me a Blizzard at Dairy Queen. My 6.5-year-old daughter, what is she doing? She's bribing her dad. She wants me to buy her a sweet treat at Dairy Queen. All the kids laughed. They couldn't believe it. I had so much fun. Well, the good news was a few weeks, or it may even been a month and a half, the weather warmed up. I took her to Dairy Queen by herself, bought her a small Blizzard. We sat outside in this beautiful Montana, a very big sky, and she just passionately gulped down and was delighted with the sweetness of that Blizzard. And what do I learn? What it was my experience, I reflect on that unusual barber and the tender parenting experience I had.
Yeah.
Number 1, my kids, my family, all still call that Montana town by the name that they coined, Cut Bad Montana. So on your map, you'll say they should change that to Cut Bad Montana. The second thing is, this dear Whitney, now in her 30s, she's still looking for an angle to be able to reap some rewards for her sweetness. The third one is, as you can see, my hair is still growing. I still get haircuts. Along the way, a few bad haircuts, but no bad barbers.